who weren't able to see it will be able to watch later. There may be some technical difficulties, so please be patient. We're going to work through all the challenges. We did manage to overcome the lack of video with one of our participants. Everyone will be muted until they're asked to speak. Anybody from our legislative caucus, please raise your hand when you want to ask a question and wait to be recognized before you jump in. If you're joining from your mobile device, you press 6 to mute, unmute, and 9 to raise your virtual hand. So any of you out there on your cell phones, caucus staff will indicate when anybody speaking has reached their 3-minute allocated time for testimony. If you lose the connection or you have tech difficulties like that, just log off and then rejoin using the original link. And once you have spoken, you will be removed from the session unless there are further questions from the caucus members. But when you complete your testimony and question period, then you'll be removed from the session. So with that, Senator Lopes, do you have any comments you'd like to make?
Sure. I just want to make it very clear. And so first, I'll thank everyone for coming on board, both legislators and experts in the field. Just want to make it very clear, this is not a legislative committee hearing. This is an ad hoc, bipartisan listening caucus, for whatever words to those effect that you want to use in that place. We did try to make it as transparent and open to the public as possible. I know we ran into some technical difficulties because we are off session, but it will be recorded. I don't think it's being live streamed, but it'll be recorded so people can access it later on and listen to what people have to say. This is every single, we sent out an invitation to every legislator to be on this caucus, and I believe quite a few, well over 50 responded. So it's everyone who responded and wanted to be part of it is part of it. It's not exclusionary. So we want to sit, listen to experts in the field on higher education in Connecticut with the hopes that it'll guide some of our decision making next session. But with that, Representative Cheeseman, if you want to move us forward to the first speaker, I'd love to see it happen.
All right. Thank you, Senator Lopes. And the first speaker we have listed on our agenda today is Colina Sanker, and I see Colina has joined. So Colina, if you would like to kick us off, please. And if you, all speakers, if you could introduce yourself, indicate whether you're a professor, faculty, what your particular background is as you give us your testimony and your input today. Thank you. Colina.
Hi all, thank you so much for being here today. I am Colina Sanker. I am currently I'm a philosophy professor at Gateway. I'm the chair of the Faculty Advisory Committee to the Board of Regents. And I'm also political director for the 4Cs Union, representing about 3,500 faculty and staff across the 12 campuses in the state. I'm going to talk really fast today because what I'm going to try to do is sort of make just the facts of consolidation clear. I'm not going to be able to make full arguments for what I claim. I'll just throw the claims out there, and please ask me about them if you want me to flesh them out. A lot of our speakers later on are going to be addressing the things that I mentioned. But since I'll be talking so fast, I'm going to attempt to use some visual aids just to make it a little bit more palatable. So here we go. Let's hope this works. And I'm backwards. Give me just 1 second. And here we go. Better, right? Okay, so I'm going to address the myths of consolidation in conversation with Governor Lamont just a few weeks ago. He described this consolidation as a consolidation of back office function. And I very recently heard the government relations staff at CSCU say to a reporter offhandedly, oh, it's just, some streamlining of back office functions. So there is a lot of misinformation, and it is not by accident. So first, that it is a consolidation of back office functions is just not the case. Consolidation means the elimination of all 12 community colleges. And what that means is that, among other things, legislators will not be able to take for granted that because there is one of these locations available to their constituents, that they will have a full service college, so to speak, without an external accreditor ascertaining that. And if you're having trouble reading what I have there, use speaker view and it'll be larger. Consolidation saves money. Again, I can't make a full argument. I will give you one example from 1 year. One category of spending, projected cost of labor for the transition, when the resolution was passed by the board in 2017, was that it would cost nothing. The academic and student affairs staffing for the college that doesn't yet exist, that's over and above the 12 existing colleges for fiscal year 21 alone, was $10.5 million. Going forward, that would mean about $13 million a year, and we are 2 years away from the projected opening of the college. Now, again, this is just one category of spending, 1 year, and there are many others. The projections that suggest that we will save money in the future are based on unrealistic expectations, such as the jump in enrollment by about 25%, which is just impossible. Sorry, let's go back. Path to efficiency. We have duplicated processes, once local and immediate processes, now multi-step and convoluted. Please ask Lowe's Amy about password resets, or read Rob Levine's testimony on IT processes. And this is not just incidental, it's by design. We have new levels of administration added. Consolidation ensures equity and is an anti-racist project. This one in particular, if you started listening in about 2019, this is the story you heard, not the saving money problem, right? But ultimately, this is a disinvestment in places where just recently more than 50% of our students identify as Black and brown, right, as non-white. So these are colleges that serve primarily Black and brown students, and at exactly the moment that this population surges, we are disinvesting. And that's because, of course, the money is being redirected from the places that serve students. Some of the policies in the college disadvantage working students who must attend part-time. Other policies disadvantage students who are most underserved by their K-12 system. And we have the potential, based on one of our policies, of entirely abandoning the students who need the most. So Mike Bakaris will talk a bit about this, as will others. Please ask questions about that. And I would love to answer some questions about that also. So clearly, this is not an effort that is focused on equity, because even if these things are not intentional, what happens is that if you are building something at a great distance from the people that you serve, you have to be informed by the people on the ground. And our governance processes are supposed to ensure that those of us who are in contact with students every day are communicating these needs to management, but our governance processes have been broken. There's been an insistence that there will be no governance while the policies of the curriculum of the new college are being built. There's a reduced scope for the new college leadership now that we have CEOs rather than presidents. And the Board of Regents does not comply with the statutes concerning its advisory committees, so that as chair of the FAC, I've struggled for 2 years to have the meetings described by the statute as happening no less than 2 times a year with the board. The student advisory committee is the same. So the board is not hearing from the people that it serves and the people who deliver the service that we give. Many think that we've gone too far to turn back now and there are no alternatives, but you will hear from people today who will tell you that there are alternatives. And the flip side of that is that we have suffered too much damage for too many years to keep going down this road. You know about the relationship, I'm sure, between faculty and staff and management, and a lot is lost as we have been understaffed and underserved for so long. These colleges are irreplaceable. Once their accreditations are gone, they're gone. We don't get them back. So we really have to think very hard if we're moving in the right direction. Tracy Hartzler and Kathy Uribari, I messed up her name, will show you some of the alternatives. Francis Cohen, Lauren Doninger, Ron Picard will tell you about things that are happening at our colleges right now that are other paths forward towards our stated goals. And lastly, that a small minority of faculty and staff oppose consolidation. There was a petition with about 1,500 signatures in early 2019. There was a vote of no confidence in the spring of 2019. Faculty and staff withdrew from consolidation work in early 2020. Elected governance leaders at the college level, state level, and representing the union are here with you today, right? And just 2 days ago, there have been actions all over the state for quite some time, but just 2 days ago, over 200 of us were outside the governor's mansion, begging for some change in direction for the system. So our hope, and I hope that all of you have the 4 stated goals that we hope the caucus will pursue, but they are simply to retain accreditation of the 12 colleges, to preserve local control where it makes sense so that we can directly serve our students, to support a healthy level of full-time staffing, and to actually engage in a realistic plan to financially support the community colleges, because this one is not yet realistic. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Colina, and you could tell. Thank you for presentation. Obviously, very as succinct as it could be. We are out of practice doing hearings. I guess I forgot to say that we were going to give some people a 3-minute speaking period. I didn't want to cut you off because we hadn't said that. With the remainder of people speaking, try to condense their commentary to three minutes or so. We will ask follow-up questions, but at this point, are there any questions for Mr. Sanker? Representative Cheeseman.
Yes, and just quickly, Colina, you mentioned that this plan could actively disadvantage both people who are working and attending school part-time, and in particular, those students who were underserved by the K through 12 system. And if you feel a later speaker is going to expand on that more effectively, then yeah, you're free not to comment, but those particularly struck me because I think one of the pluses of the community college system, as I've seen it in the past, is one, that ability to support the part-time student and also to help those who need additional help navigating through the system. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So there is, especially right now, a developmental education reform that would make it so that when we talk about, addressing the needs of the students who are most underserved by their K through 12 system, PH 1240 and was an attempt to reduce the amount of time that we hold students in non-credit bearing courses. And there's been a lot of work in the past decade to really refine that. And as impossible as it seemed a decade ago, there has been great success. Now, thankfully, PH 1240 came with some funding, though it did not always get where it most needed. But the thing is that serving the students who need the most tends to be quite an expensive process. So the new reform that has been introduced aims to completely remove standalone developmental courses and put students into what is referred to as a co-requisite model. So every student goes directly into college level math and English with supports, right? And I don't want to get into too much detail with that. What I'll say about that, and I think Mike Butkaris is perfectly placed to speak in more detail if you want to hear that. But here's what I have to say about that part. What I think PH 1240 and others discovered is that they were making use of the co-requisite model, and it was the sort of gold standard of the co-requisite model, but we didn't have the funding to support it. So the direction that we are moving in now is to provide a scaled down version of that to the students for whom it is appropriate. And then there are other students who need a little more for whom it is not appropriate. And we are providing almost nothing appropriate to them. So we're providing less to the students who used to be benefited by the so-called co-requisite reform, and we are providing less to the students who need something else. So it is very much a withdrawal of services from our developmental students. And quite frankly, the experts that teach these courses are saying that the way that they are currently designed won't serve. Now, we have quite a few years before this is implemented, and there is a lot going on, and we can refine it. I think the thing to pay attention to is that it is clearly, if this was overlooked, right? Or if another implication of that reform is that developmental students will be so overburdened with coursework if they participate in PACT that basically they would sort of possibly be excluded from participating in PACT, right? So the equity issues have not been properly thought through. They clearly were not forefronted, right? And of course, our stats are going to look better if we try to push everybody towards full-time, because that is a measure of success. But in the long term, if you push students who cannot attend full-time into attending full-time, very often they will simply just fail out. So this is something that there's a correlation between students who can attend full-time and actually completing a degree. And any student who can, we want to push them in that direction. But in pushing students in that direction, we are not serving the students who are going part-time. So really, there's a lot of detail there that I don't want to go into too much, but I think it just speaks to the fact that these equity and anti-racist issues have not been forefronted, even though it has been advertised as an effort in this direction.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I didn't see who raised their hand first, but either Representative Turco or Representative Wood.
Yeah, I think it was Meskers and then Turco and then Wood, but you go for whatever you want, Rick.
Oh, Steve, I didn't see your hand. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm late to the game in my involvement with Norwalk Community College and my speaking and meeting with them. So there are two different issues I'm hearing structurally or fundamentally. One is and I'm trying to separate the issues and try to understand there's a question of consolidation and accreditation. And I'm assuming the elimination of accreditation from the individuals is in the consolidation into one unitary organization.
Yes.
I'm neither going to be an advocate. I'm unwashed on the subject. So I'm neither an advocate or not. So my concern more there's a couple of different concerns. I guess fundamental concern, what I'm trying to understand is, is the major objection the loss of independence? Or is the principal objective that the resources are somehow going to be both diverted and poorly used to achieve the objectives? Because on that, you can count on, personally, it's my support, that we want a better educational process. We want to be more inclusive. We want to bring more of our students and young adults through the process. And if the consolidation ends up with a leveling of services, I can see how that's a problem. If you look at the socioeconomic spread and the geographic spread, you want to make sure that you're providing the level of services that lift people up and give them the opportunity. So I'm hearing the arguments, but I guess I'm hearing them at a level at 30,000 feet that I'm trying to understand. If we want to get boots on the ground and achieve the objectives, is it fundamental to have 12 independent organizations? That's I guess the question I have.
So you'll hear some ideas about how that can be maintained. And I think there's certainly a desire for that because of the great value that has existed at each one of these institutions in the past, and because of the genuine differences between them, right? At the same time, this is not an in principle sort of objection to consolidation. Most of the people that you're going to see and hear from here have been intimately involved in consolidation work, and it just doesn't add up. Stephen Adair was chair of FAC when this plan was introduced, and I'm here now. It still doesn't add up. And what we're seeing is that on the most basic level, we can't even talk about ideals yet. We can't even, I was not critiquing how well we are moving towards equity and anti-racism. All I could say is that those words have been used in the service of sort of insulating the plan from criticism. It was a plan that was originally advertised as reducing costs, right? But this is real. We are at the level of like, I think this is going to break. I think this is going to be a huge mess, and we're going to have to clean it up for years. The money doesn't add up. The processes don't add up. And part of it is that we're moving at such a pace, right? I wish I could show you. There is a sheet that shows all the processes that things go through when they go through curriculum to ensure that there's a close level of scrutiny at every level. The sheet is beautiful. It looks like, wow, there's a lot of eyes on this thing. The reality is that none of that is happening because we can't do it as fast as they're asking us to do it. So there's a lot of haste. And there's an absence of like a clear vision for this thing. So we appear to be building a system that will be more expensive. We've front-loaded the hiring of administration. And what it will inevitably suffer is services at the level of where the students are. And through this transition, of course, this is a very ambitious project. So of course, you don't expect things to go ideally, but through this process, that is precisely what has happened. You know, Stephen, if you read his testimony, his testimony lays out the argument that this might cost us close to $100 million by the time we're done, before the college even opens. That means that that is money that the legislature has allocated to the colleges that never reaches us, right? So you know that we're already doing our best with what we have. We have way less than you think. So this is about, you know, not having a clear vision for how to serve things like equity, but also just basics. and I don't know how we're going to get there. Yeah, so it's very specific. And while I don't know whether retaining the 12 accreditations is the only way to get there, it would be a wonderful way to get there.
Okay. Sorry, I won't take up more time with that. That's my fundamental question. Is I'm not challenging the questioning and the goals of getting the resources to the ground. I'm just trying to figure out whether we can do that with or without accreditation. Is the consolidation in and of itself an impossible feat? So, and I'm here to listen. That's
yeah. And the real question is, what real achievement? So creating a whole new college is an enormous task, right? It is, I mean, the labor for so many, it's a huge and ambitious task. And consolidating 12 like institutions into a single one, right, has never been done before. This is huge and ambitious. And the real question is, what purpose does it serve? Like all of this work, this creation of a brand new institution, what is the unique achievement that a single accreditation gets us? And we don't really have an answer. We've been told that course sharing in the middle of, you know, across semesters, you know, in the same semester is the issue. Well, there are other ways to do that. You'll hear about the Consortium Model. You've heard that there's a difficulty with students using financial aid, you know, at different institutions in the same semester. Again, there are ways to do that. And the thing is, if you start with a vision for what you actually want to offer students, you can build the system to serve that. I'm not sure that we actually started with a vision for how we wanted to serve students. So a lot of things are falling by the wayside as we go, because the initial plan was just we can reduce and reduce costs. And because I think it wasn't, the actual needs of students weren't taken into account, we are actually multiplying costs because that path was not realistic.
All right, thank you, Stephen. I'm going to move on to Representative Wood because Representative Turco didn't have lunch with me yesterday. Representative Wood, please go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much, Colina. You're so articulate on this, and I so appreciate all your viewpoints on this. A couple of things stand out. One, I'm deeply disturbed to hear that the racial and equity reasons that this has been one of the reasons they want to do this is not being supported at all, which I'm not surprised about. I think this is a very it's a very challenging undertaking. To your point, it's a huge, ambitious project, never been done before. And I think the other piece is when you start with a vision of how to support the students, then you can build a more holistic and organic organization. And that hasn't happened. This is starting from the top down, and it's not going to be as successful as it would be starting with the student's voice from the bottom up and from the voices of the community and the needs of the community of what they need at that time. And I think we're going to lose the nimbleness. And it also, right from the get-go, when they formed the community colleges in 2013. I used to know this on the top of my head. I think it was 2000.
2011. Sorry,
No.
community colleges or CSCU?
When they created the Board of Regents. When they,
2011.
thank you. Oh, so it was 2011. All right.
Yeah.
It was purported to save all this money, and it didn't. It actually cost more money. So the track record just is not there, and to not have the voices of the community, the professors, the students, the community college presidents not being at the table, it's just not helpful. Anyway, it's not productive. It's not going to serve the students, and particularly the students who are most vulnerable and those who we want to support, communities of color. So thank you again. And I don't have any questions. I just, certainly as a legislator, and that I've been opposing this for a number of years now, and I'm delighted to see so many more people on the call, especially I've got to shout out Roberto Willis. It's lovely to see you on this call. Thank you for being here. And thank you again. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. May I just make one comment as you talk about the trajectory of the CSCU system? Yeah, absolutely. This is not new. The consolidation is a specific instance of the sort of diversion of funding towards the system office, even before the creation of the shared services that now kind of put control at the, let's mute. Heather, mute. There we go. that serves some of the community colleges. The actual allocation to the system office really is just for, like, it's an operating fund and a few administrative salaries. It's way less than $10 million a year. They actually control, and this is maybe like 2018, 2019 now, about $69 million a year. There's a lot of money coming out of the institutions and moving in that direction, and often not to support initiatives that are supported by the folks at the colleges who are trying to figure out how to actually serve their students. So yes, I'm so glad your eyes are on that, and thank you for your support.
Okay, Representative Turco, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm ready to have lunch with you anytime you want, okay? I've got some great restaurants in Newington. I'm sorry I can't come into camera. I just pulled over to the side of the road here. I'm actually driving down to teach a college course myself later today, last course of the semester. So excited about that. Thank you for the presentation. And, you know, I have, and a lot of this you started to already cover in your previous conversation with Representative Metzger's. I've always been skeptical of the way this consolidation was being implemented, but I always thought and I think you'll agree that the goals are valuable. We do need to find ways to reduce cost, to make sure that our community colleges are sustainable. We've had an issue with enrollment and with an issue with deficits for a number of years, and we do need to find a way to reduce administrative costs, find different areas that can be consolidated, and provide a better experience to the students, which was one of the goals. Streamlining the services for them, the application process, the financial aid. So I think a lot of those things are good goals. So what I'm hoping to hear more of from those who don't like the way the current consolidation process is taking place, are very skeptical of it, is what are the areas where, without doing a whole consolidation of going down to one college and losing all of that local community control, where are the areas, though, that consolidation of services does make sense, that this legislature could, let's say, if it were to stop this total consolidation from going through. Still, though, mandate that certain aspects are consolidated to reduce those costs, which we desperately need, to help with enrollment, and to make sure that our community colleges are providing the best education and experience possible to students. So I want to know all of those areas, and I want to know more about the areas where consolidation is going to do a disservice, because that community local control is so important to the student's experience as well. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me those questions. And I'm just going to listen now as I continue to drive to teach. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Senator Lopes has had to step away for a couple of minutes. Thank you, Representative Turco. Representative Nuccio, please, your turn.
Thank you, Representative. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for coming, Colina. This has been interesting. I'm a fairly new legislator, but I've kept my eye on the consolidation for a long time. My first degree was Lucier Community College. So I was a working mom. You know, I had a job, I worked full time, and I went to school. So education is very important to me. And my concern has always been a little twofold. Since I've been a legislator, a lot of emails from professors, and they're talking a lot about intellectual property and stuff like that happen that they don't like. But I do agree with Representative Turco slightly in that having all these community colleges with all this as admin, there has to be a way to kind of regionalize that, because the more admin we build in, the more expensive the cost. And now with the programs that we have with free community college and everything else, it's just a higher tax impact. So I would be interested to see if there's any true productive plans on what we could do to kind of regionalize and cut out some of the administrative costs. I do think the Board of Regents is nothing but another big, huge administrative cost, and that concerns me. But what really concerns me is when I went to community college, and I'll be upright, forthright, like I said, my first degree was community college. My second daughter went to Northwestern Community College, probably the best nursing school in the state of Connecticut. Their rates are higher graduation, higher job placement, and higher sustainability than UConn. Great program. She drove an hour and 15 minutes every single day to go to that program because the school was so good. We have some amazing community colleges that really used to be able to have their specialty. I was really sad when I saw sports leave community colleges. Sports are a great outlet for a lot of young kids to go that can't afford to go to D3 or D2 or even D1 schools, go do 2 years at a community college, and then they can get a scholarship for their junior and senior year at a higher level school to play, which helps them get through school without debt. So I've seen a lot of stuff just being removed from the schools that really is bothersome to me. And my biggest concern, and what I would really like to understand from people, is in this consolidation, how much of that uniqueness do we lose? I'm really kind of terrified for the nursing program. I think the Connecticut Community College nursing programs are amazing. And they enable you to get a 2-year degree and become an RN, start making money, and then do your last 2 online to really get, especially working women of color, working women across the board, like into a great profession that's going to give them financial independence. And I'm afraid for those schools and what's going to happen. So being new to all of this, where can I help to find more information and be an advocate for these schools keeping their uniqueness and finding ways to make, as Representative Turco said, less administration, less management, and more focus on that students?
I would say that, you know, you're going to hear a bit today for sure. And I hope that we have a future meeting of this, or we're invited back for the caucus to talk about solutions, right? I think right now we just need to make clear what the consolidation is and is not doing. And the consolidation is more of a problem than a solution. It's not moving towards the stated goals, right? So, you know, in general, of course, there are going to be ways for real back office functions to be run more efficiently, for cost sharings, for cooperation between these institutions. You'll hear one consortium sort of model of that today that seems to be working really well. What I find really striking about that consortium model is it really diverges from the way that we are doing it in terms of, just think about incentive systems. The way that Tracy and Kathy are going to talk about what they're presenting with their consortium to the New Mexico system is that they are working together, right? All of the different institutions, the heads of the different institutions, to figure out what works for them, to design something that works for them, in the hopes of creating something that works so well that other colleges buy into it. They see the successes and they buy into it. We have gone in the other direction, right? College leadership has been forced out. There are now service level agreements that stipulate that certain services will come from a shared service at the system office. It is the only available service, and yet college leaders are responsible for the standard of service that they provide, which makes no sense. There's a monopoly on that service, and there's no motivation to get that in shape and actually serving the college leadership, right? And the colleges and the students, right? I think the most important thing, right, when it comes to the academic side of things, the actual accreditation, there is no need that any one of us has seen. There's nothing to be achieved by eliminating these accreditations. When you think about what an accreditation is, it represents decades of curriculum and programs being honed by experts who are responding to the needs of their community and their students. We know how different the K through 12 systems are in different areas of the state, which means that each one of our colleges are dealing with unique student needs and dealing with unique areas, right? When you eliminate the accreditation, all of that goes away, and we are starting fresh with curriculum that is being built in a hurry in a couple of years, right? No one's eyes have really been on this. We haven't figured out how to transition students from the programs that they're in now to the next. So maintaining the individual academic side and dealing with those back office things, but most of all, it needs to be led by the people who are actually serving the students. It cannot be centralized, because what we're seeing now is that, I'm just going to say that it feels like system office is worse than blind, because what's worse than stumbling about in a terrain that you don't know is thinking you have a map and it's a map of somewhere else. And there are lots of think tanks and lots of consultants that give us lots of theoretical views of what should serve students. And we are listening to those folks and not listening to the students to the people who are actually engaged with the students, the people that we actually serve, the actual students. So we are diverging so far from where we should go that it is really unfortunate. And it's because it's a very difficult thing to build a process of communication and of shared leadership that allows all of the levels, right, to communicate well with each other. And we now have a multi-level management, right? My college CEO answers to a regional president, who answers to a community college president, who answers to a CSCC president. We have 2 or 3 provosts at the system office. It is a huge, complicated system, and making that work is extremely difficult. Getting the right kind of responsiveness is extremely difficult. Not only is our system broken in that way currently, there is an absence of a desire to fix it, right? Because it is much easier for a few people to just take control at the system level. They're much more nimble, right? They're nimble, but they're not actually serving the students. That's the problem. They can move fast, but the question is, are they moving in the right direction? So that is I think, more than anything, because even on the academic side, we have had efforts, Lauren will tell you, about TAP, about facilitating transfer. We need to be coordinating closely, but standardizing and homogenizing is not the way to do it. Getting all of the stakeholders to cooperate and and innovate, right? And come up with, like, Ron will tell you how well they're doing at Naugatuck Valley. And we're not doing that. And my job's going to be slightly harder if we start stepping up to your level. But that's what we do need to do. We need to be sharing these kinds of things. So I'm not saying that we need to stay completely independent and do our own things, but it has to be in a system that is informed by the people that serve the students. And that's what we absolutely don't have now. Eliminating accreditations accomplishes nothing. And it's a whole lot of destruction. And can I just say, I love to hear that you are a product of our system. And what I find really interesting is that the people that you're going to hear from today, overrepresented in our group, are folks who are also products of our system, but not just that, our children went to these schools, our parents went to these schools, and I think for a couple of us, all of the above, right? So when we talk to you today, like, we're not just talking as people who make our living in the system, we were like made by the system. And what is, during one of the hardest years for higher ed and basically for everyone, right? We were working double and triple time on this issue. We are here with you today talking about this when it's hard enough to just get through the semester. And the reason that we are doing it is that it feels deeply unethical to collect a paycheck and ensure our relatively comfortable lives while kicking out the ladder from behind us for a whole lot of people. And a whole lot of those people look a lot like me, and I just can't take it, right? So that is really why we're here. The problem is quite that bad. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome. It was an honor to go through the community college program. I was first generation college in my family, and 2 of my 3 did 2 years at community college before they went off. One graduated from UConn going for a doctorate, and the other one's a nurse now. So community college has served all of us very well.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Representative. Seeing no other hands, I'm going to move on to our second speaker. Thank you, Dr. Sanker. Our second speaker is Stella Lopez.
Thank you so much. I wish I was as eloquent as Colina, and I wish I could talk also very, very fast, because there are a number of things I would like to say. Basically, I was invited to talk because I bring a national perspective. I am the retired provost of the Connecticut State Colleges and Universities, so I work with within the system. I also serve as the Vice Chancellor for the CSU system, and I did serve as interim dean of academic affairs at Naugatuck Valley Community Colleges. So I do know both community colleges very well. I know what system offices do, and I have a national expertise that I bring to this conversation. What I wanted to sort of simply address is the issue that what we know, what the evidence and research shows, is that if you want students to succeed, especially vulnerable students like the community college students, which are the low-income, first-generation students of color, you need to really ensure that 2 things happen. Direct services are provided to those students, direct services at the college, and also a chance to do something within the classroom that engages them and that leads to the deep learning. So the pedagogical aspects, research, internships, and direct services. The enrollment decline, what fell throughout the whole nation when the pandemic happened, because these community college students are the more vulnerable. If you look at what's happening at the national level to bring those students back, and that's a question you need to ask yourself, do you want those students back? What colleges are doing in other states, if you look at Tennessee, they had a 20% enrollment decline at a community college. They created a care team at the college made up of enrollment specialists, advisors, and financial aid people to really talk and help students navigate back into the college, because these are the students that are working, these are the students that are in the front line, these are the students that need a lot of support to happen. That's the way it's being done. I am advising a community college north of Connecticut, I will not say which one, that is creating a structure within the college to really reach out to the community, to the Latino community, and ensure that those students feel that they can come to the college where they will be supported, and they will be provided the experiences that they need. Now, because I knew I was going to be talking to you, I decided, let me try and see whether this consolidated model works. So what I did, I went to the web pages of 5 of the community colleges in Connecticut and decided that I was going to pretend to be a transfer student, that I wanted to come back and see what processes I needed to follow. 2 of the web pages that I looked at did not have a phone where I could call. I would have to send an email and then wait for the response and so on. The 3rd community college had a phone. So I called and I was told a customer service representative would talk to me. So she came on the phone and I explained that at 42 credits, I'm
Sorry to
adult.
interrupt this, Stella. Just wanted to let you know that we reached the 3-minute mark. If you could wrap up your comments.
Okay.
That'd be great.
I will summarize very briefly. Thank you. I appreciate the. Anyway, I told her that I was bringing 42 credits. She said, how long ago did you do them? I said, 2007. She said, I'm sorry, you have to start all over again. That's too many years ago. I knew that was not true. I knew she was giving me the wrong information. And I asked her again, she said, oh no, you have to start again because those credits are no longer valid. So after we hung up, I called a friend of mine who works as an advisor at a community college in Connecticut, and she confirmed that what she was telling me was not true. So I went on to the next webpage, I called the other number, got the same customer service representative message, and the person who came to the phone was the same woman who had given me the wrong information. And I said to her, look, I'm sorry, but I spoke to you a while ago and you gave me wrong information. And she hung up. So this is how your taxpayer money is being invested through this consolidation and consolidated services to give and provide wrong information to somebody who, fortunately, I know better and can defend myself and can share with you that this very tragic approach. Again, look at how the funding is going to provide direct services, how the funding is going to go to supporting the classroom experiences so these students can succeed. That's what helps minority students, that's what helps first generation students, and that will help students succeed. And you need every student at the community college to be successful citizen of Connecticut. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I do see a question for you from Senator Anwar.
Sure.
Thank you so much, Senator Lopes. Thank you so much, Ms. Lopez, for your testimony. If I heard you correctly, and I think we're sort of interrupted because of the time, could you just repeat what you said about the study that you would try to do and the misinformation that was being provided to the students? Because that's very concerning.
Well, I would agree that it's very concerning. What I did, I pretended to be an adult student who had some credits from another community college and wanted to transfer to Connecticut and wanted to know and understand which program would be the best one for myself to complete my associate degree. So in talking to the representative, she asked me how many credits I had. I said 42. I said I did them at Valencia Community College in Florida. And she asked me then, when did I finish? And I said, well, my last year of study was 2007. And then she went on to say, those credits are no longer valid and you have to start from the beginning again. I asked her to repeat that because I couldn't believe what she was telling me. And she repeated the same information. Again, this is through one web page of a community college that I don't want to, because I know the president, I know the CEO, I don't want to name it. So I went to another web page of another community college and I called a number and the same process was happening. I got a voice saying that a customer service representative would help me. And when this woman came on, it was the same person who had given me the wrong information. So I said to her, look, I just spoke to you and you gave me the wrong information. And she hung up. So I did not continue to go to the other 5 remaining community college because I was already amazed at, again, what is being promised and what is being delivered. 2 of the community colleges in their web pages did not have a phone number where a transfer student could call in my case, I was pretending that I needed to talk to somebody because I do know that is that direct contact that helps students, again, who are first generation students of color, to get the information and to addresses the barriers that they confront. So it is that contact that helps them. It's the most successful way to helping a student. So you know, I couldn't find any way to do it. I would have to have email someone and then wait till somebody gets back to me. So what I'm saying to you, if you want to bring those students that left because you are vulnerable, the students that left were the ones that were impacted by the pandemic. The decline was due to the pandemic. You need to ensure that the community colleges do the right thing. Direct services, not a, you know, a customer service representative structure. Direct services, direct contact, and then provide the classroom experiences that they need to ensure that they are successful.
All right, thank you, Senator Anwar. Any follow-up?
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, I don't see any hands raised. Correct me if I'm wrong about that. But the next speaker, thank you, Ms. Lopez, and our next speaker is Stephen Adair.
Thank you so much for this opportunity, and it's a pleasure to see so many people here. I'm Stephen Adair. I'm professor of sociology at CCSU, and I served as faculty representative on the boards of regents from 2013 to 2018. At the State University, we have a great interest in the proposed consolidation. Community college students are our students. Every year at CCSU, the number of students who graduated is always larger than the incoming class of first-year students. Most of those graduating students have some community college credits. We also share the same board and the same system office, and we have also experienced effort by the system office to expand its own administrative reach to our detriment. Among university faculty, there is universal opposition to the community college consolidation. It's hard to find anybody who thinks it's a good idea. So I'm here in solidarity with my community college colleagues, and because our common interest in student success. The merger of the state universities and the community colleges into the BOR system in 2011 was supposed to save money by reducing administrative staff. That savings never materialized, and the BOR system has been in dysfunctional turmoil ever since. We are now under our 6th president in 11 years. It's time this legislature recognized that we have a structural problem. The system office is not an educational institution. It has no students and no faculty. It offers no academic programs. Yet since 2011, it has acted consistently to expand its sphere of control over both academic and administrative functioning, while ever narrowing the scope of communication from the campuses to the board. The consolidation of the 12 community colleges into a single accreditation with all administration sitting in offices in New Britain and Hartford without students or faculty is only the most obvious example of this tendency. But even prior to the proposed consolidation, the system office had privileged its own staff. It has added a provost, an associate provost, a chief of staff, a vice president for enrollment, a director of digital learning, a director of financial aid, a vice president of student success and academic initiative, and the list goes on. That's aside from the consolidation of community colleges. The total expenditures for the community colleges and state universities have increased only a few percentage points since 2017, but the system office has more than doubled from just over $30 million to well over 60 million. Under the prior board of trustees for the state universities, a primary responsibility was an actual rigorous evaluation of each university president. The BOR has never exercised such a particular interest in the functioning of individual institutions. Instead, it has wholly relied on the system office to provide all communications. The system office, and this was especially true under the leadership of Mr. Ojakian, jealously guarded its monopoly over the information that went to the board. Over the last 3 years, 10 of the 12 presidents of the community colleges were either pushed out by the system office or left for institutions in other states where their leadership skills would not be ignored. My testimony.
Sorry to interrupt.
I'm finishing up. Yep, got it.
3-minute mark. If you could just wrap up your comments. Thanks so much.
In my testimony here today, I do not have time to review the details and the size of the state's investment in the community college consolidation, but in my written testimony, I illustrate why this is likely to be in excess of $100 million. Not counted in that cost is the ongoing qualitative erosion in the student experience as faculty and students are reduced through attrition while more personnel are added to the one college that does not yet exist. I think you'll hear more about that today. The hubris exhibited by the system office is not good for the students in the state, the quality of our public higher education, and the state as a whole. We are here to encourage you and to help you to recognize, diagnose, and address this problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adair. I don't think I see any hands raised. If not, I believe we'll be, thank you for your testimony. We're moving on to Ron Picard. Please unmute
You're
yourself.
muted.
Sorry about that. Good morning, caucus members, and thank you for this opportunity. My name is Ron Picard. I am a native of Waterbury, Connecticut, and Naugatuck Valley Community College has been critical to the success of my family and my community for over 50 years. I have taught at the college as an English professor for more than 17 years and recently finished a 2-year term as the college's Faculty Senate President. I also serve in the Faculty Advisory Committee to the board. My roles at Naugatuck Valley Community College include work as an Associate Dean, where I measured and documented the progress the college was making on all areas of our strategic plan, including enrollment, retention, and graduation. Therefore, I am well positioned to tell you that until the consolidation efforts began, NVCC was strong and making measurable progress in all areas. Before consolidation, we carried out program level assessments of student performance to prove that our students were graduating with the skills and knowledge we promised to teach them. Our assessment program was praised by our accreditor and was noted by the Aspen Prize Committee as a reason we were declared one of the top 150 colleges in the United States. In addition, we were able to collect data on innovations to developmental education under Public Act 1240 and adjust course delivery and content in response. We shared our findings through a system-wide PA 1240 committee. Such sharing was not part of the consolidation, but led to colleges adopting practices that had been widely tested and shown to benefit our most vulnerable students. These continuous efforts toward improving student outcomes stopped when the system office began its obsessive focus on consolidation and refused to renew a contract for crucial assessment software, despite its use at all 4 state universities, Charter Oak, and 7 out of the 12 community colleges. As a result of this decision, NVCC no longer does any assessment of student learning at the program level. While the system office refused us the software we needed, it demanded that we spend $250,000 on Achieve the Dream consultants. After a thorough analysis of our past successes, these consultants filed a report recognizing that the work the consultants were hired to help us complete was already in place. Statewide, Achieve the Dream consultants have so far wasted $3 million without any signs of measurable outcomes. Likewise, the system office hired the Dana Center to revamp developmental education, dismissing Public Act 1240 as insufficient, despite a great deal of data to the contrary. The Dana Center proceeded to alienate math and English faculty, whose work was ultimately dismissed as the board voted to eliminate developmental education. Finally, NVCC was awarded $16 million from the federal government for COVID relief. The system office redirected much of that money toward the hiring of 17 guided pathways advisors to increase our student to advisor ratio from the current 30-to-1 to 250-to-1. A multi-million-dollar spending spree on advisors is not an improvement at NVCC. It is regressive. Repeatedly, this consolidation has ignored local success stories such as these to waste.
Sorry to interrupt, but just reached the 3-minute mark. If you could please wrap up.
No problem, Aaron. I've got one more sentence. Repeatedly, this consolidation has ignored local success stories such as these to waste money on consultants, high-level administrators, and programs that inefficiently do what we are already doing. As a son of a community college graduate, I'm saddened by this. As an employee, I'm demoralized, and as a taxpayer, I'm outraged. Thank you for your time.
Any questions for Mr. Picard? Seeing, Representative Cheeseman, please.
Sorry, we're slow on the hand. Thank you for coming so much today, Ron. You were talking about the success you were tracking student achievement. Can you tell me how long that whole system was in place, and having discovered, the data you were, how are you using that to inform your practices going forward? Because that seems to me exactly what we should be doing with our system.
Thank you. That's a great question. Well, this all started back in 2012. We were cited for not having a outcomes-driven general education. NETCHI, our accreditor, cited us for not having outcomes for our gen ed, general education requirements that would be accessible, that we could assess. And I was also involved in the TAP committee that was put together in the summer of 2012 to put together outcomes that were shareable across all the state universities and the community colleges. I was on that committee. And so I ended up becoming the assessment coordinator for the college to bring those outcomes. And actually, I had our college adopt those general education requirements that were created for TAP. They adopted them for all of our programs, so that a student, if they started in TAP and went to a vocational degree program, they would have the same gen ed requirements and they wouldn't have to do anything different. And so I thought that was great. I thought if a student started a vocational education program and we're doing the TAP requirements, if they then decided to transfer, they'd be all set. So that's why we adopted the TAP gen ed for our own. And that required us, because now we had outcomes for our gen ed, we required this was about 2012. And the difference between assessing in the classroom is you assess students in the classroom with a test, right? Or an assignment, an essay or something. I teach English, so I do a lot of essays, okay, or project. When you do program level assessment, so like general education assessment or assessing an entire program, like the nursing program, right? What you're looking at there is you're looking at how do students perform across all sections of a course, right? Or across the entire program. So when they're done with the program, are they able to do the things that the program said that they were able to do? Do they have the knowledge that the program said that they would have? And so I put together, starting in, it was probably 2015, we adopted that gen ed. I put together a program where I would train faculty on how to carry out broad department level, large scale assessments using software where we would collect hundreds and hundreds of student papers or student work, where faculty then would have a blind assessment where they go through and they'd assess the student work and come up and see how as a whole we were doing, not faculty member to faculty member, but as a whole across all sections of a course. Because one of the things we find, right, is that faculty differ a little bit in terms of their grading and their standards in terms of grading. And oftentimes we have students, I know, when I was a student, we often look for the faculty member that we thought we'd get the easy A from, rather than the faculty member we'd learn the most information from, right? And so this process of going through assessment gets faculty to talk to each other about their standards and what should be an appropriate standard for students at various levels. And so that assessment regime was carried out. And I actually ended up being the chair of the academic assessment council to the provost of the entire system. And so therefore I was part of the negotiation team with IT to create that software package that was in use through almost all of the colleges and universities throughout the system. I was working closely with Central and Southern in particular on that. And we had that package. I think we were carrying that out 2015. And then I think it was last year, was it last year or the year before? I think it was last year that they did away with the software. And so without that software, there's no way for us to manage the files of over 300, 400 to 1,000 student projects and have them assessed blindly by faculty, because we don't want faculty looking at their own students. They've got to, they have to, it's sort of a peer review process, right, to ensure quality. And so that software was really, really critical. It was really important. And without that software, we just can't do the work. And so the next time next you visit us for our 5-year plan, our creditor visit us for our 5-year, they commended it. I actually have the letter that they commended us. I have it in a frame that I put on my wall because they felt as though our program was exemplary and it was something that should be shared and carried out system-wide. But when they canceled that program, when they canceled the software, we couldn't carry out assessment anymore. I resigned from my assessment coordinator work, and now I'm working basically on equity issues at the college. So I serve on I chair a diversity committee for the faculty senate, and I also am part of the Center for Racial Dialogue at our college. So that's I turned my attention to that because I didn't have the tools, the resources I needed to carry out the assessment work that I had been doing.
Thank you. We're going to try to wrap up. Any further questions? All right. Well, thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you, Senator or Representative.
Move on to Tracy Hartzler and Kathy Ulabari, please.
Sure. Good morning, or I think good afternoon where you are. So my name is Tracy Hartzler. I'm the president of Central New Mexico Community College, and I'm joining you as a member institution of the Collaborative for Higher Education for Shared Services here in New Mexico. I'm joined by Kathy Ulabari, who's our CEO of CHESS, and I think Kathy has a presentation that she can share as well, and we're going to be really respectful of your time. So I will not speak faster, but I will just highlight some of the slides in the presentation that I think you may already have. But again, we really appreciate the opportunity to join you this morning. Very briefly, we'll start with, you know who we are. The first two slides really describe a little bit of the higher education setting here in New Mexico. Unlike New England, and particularly in Connecticut, we largely have a public system. We only have 2 or 3 nonprofit private nonprofit colleges here in the state. Most of our institutions are public. We have constitutionally created 4-year institutions and teaching colleges. We have community colleges that are created by statute. And CNM is one of those independent. We call them independent community colleges. We also have 2-year colleges that are affiliated with 4-year research and our 4-year institutions, including some of our comprehensive institutions. We also have federally, tribally controlled colleges and universities. So we have a broad range of institutions. We have a broad number of institutions in our state, but most are public. And so, many of us rely on significant state funding and support for our institutions. Next slide describes a little bit about where, again, what many of you have highlighted in community colleges are similar and facing the challenges here that we face in New Mexico. We've been focused on enrollment trends, which have been declining over years, but certainly more acutely in the last 2 years due to the pandemic. We're absolutely always concerned about our finances. As I mentioned, we are significantly subsidized by our state revenues. We are known as a as a low tuition, low aid state. And we have low tuition and we have low financial aid because our state subsidizes us to a large degree, anywhere from 25 to I think 50% of any of our operating budgets are coming from the state. Our state revenues, however, fluctuate greatly based on our oil and gas revenues from the state. We are heavily dependent on oil and gas prices. And so that means our state reserves and our state funding is quite variable. So we're always concerned about finances. Also here, like everywhere else, as an employer of choice in our communities, we are finding that we have had a hard time, and really doesn't matter if you're in an urban setting or in a rural setting, we're having a hard time recruiting, retaining our workforce and a professional workforce. And I'd say for a number of our institutions, I happen to sit in the large urban area of the state, but many of the institutions, particularly in CHESS, in our collaborative effort, are struggling with finding a workforce that is capable of the challenges that we're up to, not only to manage our legacy systems, but also help to provide the services that our colleges need. And so we find that while we find it challenging to help each other out. We find it helpful for our staff to work across institutions and help other colleges because our systems are different. And so and our chart of accounts is different. And so we're struggling with how to solve this problem as well. And of course, I've already mentioned our data legacy infrastructure. So we have come to the point where a number of our institutions, and the next slide says, why CHESS? Why did we approach this effort. Like Connecticut, you had many conversations. We had many conversations around centralization. Like I said, we have constitutionally created institutions. We have institutions created by statute, and there isn't a structural reason for us to all work together. And so we were trying to. So there's a lot of discussion, particularly for some of our vulnerable, I would say, rural institutions, our two-year colleges. There's a great deal of interest in finding efficiencies, addressing risk that those institutions face, somewhat because of finances, but also because of staffing. We also are challenged with limited state resources, and how do we stretch those across 27 institutions? So there are a number of pressures on why all of our institutions could do a better job working together. And instead of, and I think Kathy, the next slide would show that instead of us and the executive, the governor, and the legislature forcing us together in a way that would create, I'd say, winners and losers, meaning some institutions might close, some institutions would be merged into others. 5 colleges and 7, most recently, 5 colleges have decided to get together and choose to contract together to frankly change how we serve students. And so what we decided was our response was to develop an approach where we achieve the benefits of a system, but we are absolutely committed to maintaining our independence. As I mentioned, C&M is an independent community college. I serve 7 elected board members. The members of CHES, the Collaborative for Higher Education Shared Services, all are governed by independent elected governing boards. Our governing boards are absolutely committed to make sure that we retain our independence while we are working together. So we do this by contract. So our colleges have agreed to, by contract, to work together to change our business systems, change how we serve our students with an eye toward efficiency, better data, better transparency to our lawmakers and our public, those who fund us, and really improve sense of service, improve type of service to our students and our employees and our community members. So that's why we chose, 5 of us chose to work together to, I'd say, leverage our resources to better serve our students. And now I think Kathy will take over here quickly.
Thank you, President Hartzler, and thank you all for allowing me to be here with you today. I'm Kathy Ulibarri, and I am the leader of the CHES organization. Erin, if you could advance to the next slide. Thank you. So really, as Tracy mentioned, we formed a nonprofit organization called the Collaborative for Higher Education Shared Services. The presidents of our institutions serve as the board of directors of this organization. And I won't read through the details out of respect for your time, but we do have a defined mission and vision, really to move forward with student-friendly student experience and in better support of students for improved student success. So each of our colleges, we have 1 college, 1 vote. So everybody is equal regardless of size or location of institution. Next slide, please. Thank you, Erin. In terms of our priorities, as Tracy mentioned, this concept of maintaining our local boards is really, really important to us. Each of our college has a very different personality, if you will, from San Juan College in the northern part of our state that is predominantly Native American, to Northern New Mexico College, which is primarily Hispanic. Central New Mexico is our urban center in the state, over to Clovis Community College, which is dairy agriculture and an Air Force base. So the personalities and cultures of those institutions are very different. And yet we knew that there is nothing about the way a college, say, processes an invoice or cuts a paycheck that distinguishes the mission of those colleges. And so our presidents did decide it is important for us to work together collaboratively. And to do so, we had to start with a solid foundation. The enterprise resource planning system, or ERP, along with the student information system. Those serve as the backbone for every single process that occurs at a college. And so first on deck in terms of priorities for CHES was to implement an ERP and student information system. And we're well underway with that now. Next slide, please. Currently, we are in the implementation phase of our new ERP. We will go live with a finance and human resources module by this time next year.
Sorry to interrupt. We're at the time mark here. If you could close up your comments, please. Thank you.
Happy to do so. Thank you, Aaron. By next year, we will be beginning the student information system, and we'll go live with that by 2025. And I think I'll just stop there and allow opportunity for questions. Thank you.
Okay, I'm unmuted now. Any questions? Friends from
Okay,
South. Representative Cheatham.
it's always me, Rick. So quickly, you said you've had 5 of the existing community colleges join. Is your hope, expectation you're going to get everyone on board? At what point does it become a really financially and logistically viable operation?
We will absolutely be logistically viable with 5 institutions. That being said, there are 2 additional institutions that are currently in the exploratory phase. They are doing a readiness assessment to see if it would benefit their particular colleges to join in. And I do expect those to be successful as well. There are several other institutions in our state that I think are taking a wait and see view and before making a decision about whether to join in. And our bylaws do not restrict us to the state of New Mexico. Any public or nonprofit institution in the United States is able to consider participation. We're just focused right now on building the foundation using these 5 New Mexico institutions.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for joining in and seeing you guys again, and I appreciate all your comments and information.
Thanks for having us.
Not a problem. Next, I have Heather Lucier.
Thank you. Honorable representatives, for allowing me to provide my testimony regarding my concerns on the consolidation of the community colleges. My name is Heather Lucier. I'm a non-traditional student. I'm a mother, a grandmother, a combat vet, and now I attend school full-time. My journey at Three River Community College began back in 2010. At that point, I started taking 1 and 2 classes and fitting those classes between deployments. And I changed my plan of study a couple of times too. During my time at Three Rivers, I've come to learn that the college offers developmental courses for students that need to basically brush up on mathematical skills or literary skills. Preparing them for university level courses such as algebra, quantitative reasoning, and statistics, this always aids. The college offers tutoring services engaging students with peers at the tutoring center. And this service serves a much needed population. The one-on-one service, math and sciences and biology and writing, definitely a plus. Whilst most college students are enrolled in either a 1 or 2 4-degree program, there's a populace that requires specialty training, hence certificate programs. Certificate programs are available and a good option for those that have time constraints, which apply to the non-traditional students typically. Many certificate programs can be completed within less than a year. Another avenue that is made available to students at Three Rivers Community College are the co-ops. Agencies such as USGS, DEEP, the Audubon, Connecticut, and the 8 Mile River Project, which are associated with degree programs, allow the students to choose which co-op best suits their scholastic path. At the same time, access to advisors and professors at the community college is not as intimidating as it would be at the university. Creating an environment that allows the students to explore their academic and personal interests in a low-stakes environment is what the community college provides. Furthermore, students transferring from school to school, this should not be difficult. Three Rivers Community College has transverse course agreements with four-year universities. Currently, Three Rivers Community College has a 2+2 agreement with UConn and Eastern for the Environmental Engineering Technologies program specifically. Statistics prove that community college transfer students maintain better grades in the four-year institution. This multitude of change that first-year students experience often negatively affects their grades and confidence. The inverse occurs with community college student transfers. These students have a better foundation, have more confidence, therefore are better prepared for the social and academic trials that are in their future. In closing, being a non-typical student and attending Three Rivers Community College prepares me for the university's courses and classes. The bridge that the community college creates by integrating the small class setting, developmental classes, unique programs, co-ops, and peer mentoring allows the students to make full advantage of the never-ending opportunities before them and create relationships beyond the classroom. If you change the community college model, you will further broaden the inequality. The community college professors know best. They know the pulse of the students and the environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you very much for taking your time for the testimony. We appreciate it. Next, I'd like to call on Representative Roberto Willis.
Hi, Senator. Nice to see you and Holly. I'm Roberta Willis. I was a state representative until 2017. Started in 2000, and I was chair of higher education for 15 of those years, 13, and vice chair for 1 year, 2 years. The reason I'm here is sort of a historical perspective, I guess, to add and sort of comment on some of the things that have been said thus far. As many of you may recall, I opposed consolidation at the time and was very concerned about the growth of a bureaucracy in the central office that was removed from students and staff and faculty. The problem is that the way it was sold to us back then, it was supposed to be money savings. It was supposed to be an opportunity for transfer and articulation, which had been going very slowly, and there certainly was concerns about that. There are certain things that the system office should be doing, and that's contracting and maybe program approval and charting progress towards our goals and developing connections to other schools, CSUs, UConn, and the independents. What's happening now is we are creating one of the largest systems, higher ed systems for community colleges in the United States. I don't know if many people are aware of that. And one of the challenges really points to why the accrediting body has had problems and turned this down, this application in the get-go. This program was called Students First when it started, as a way of saying that it was going to be in the best interest of students. I don't think they made a strong case for that, and it sounds as though that hasn't happened. I still sit on the foundation board, Northwestern Connecticut Community College, and we've had a couple of meetings presented by President Chang and our present president, but not really able to explain to us what this new organization was going to look about. It feels more like a business model than it feels like an academic body. and the creation of more at people working in this business office, system office, is really discouraging. Remember, it was sold to us as a way of saving money, becoming more sustainable, because what was happening is Connecticut, as states across the United States have been doing, are giving less and less proportionally investment to higher education. So many of the people on this call, Estella Lopez, Stephen Adair, these are people who've been working on these issues for years, who I admire tremendously, who have their pulse on what's happening here. P40 was never really considered as part of the
Representative
consolidation.
Willis?
Yes.
Apologies to cut you off. We're at the 3-minute mark now. So you
That's
could
all right.
wrap
I used to
up.
come down with that too, but anyway.
Oh, I could always ask a question like Roberta. Anything else?
Oh, well, maybe I should answer questions from some of my colleagues, former colleagues, and some new colleagues who are looking at the community college, and maybe try to add some perspective.
Sounds good. I see Representative Haddad with his hand up.
Yes, thank you very much. And
you look familiar.
You look tanned and ready. I wanted to ask a question because it gets a little bit at what you were mentioning about your opposition to the original consolidation of the two of what was then a community college system with the CSU system to create sort of a super board of regents. I've been concerned about a number of things about the distance between the board of regents as a decision-making body from the individual colleges and universities. And I've been concerned as it's grown, just about as you say, the desire to sort of self-perpetuate in its mission and to grow itself, really to the detriment of individual colleges and campuses. And so I've come to understand that really what we have, in my estimation, is a flawed system. I'm going to make a statement, ask you to comment. A flawed system that puts the administrative layer, the administrative bureaucracy, really above the presidents and campus leaders in terms of influence, and really the guardian of access to the board of regents. Mm-hmm. And so what happens is now is the bureaucratic layer has the power really to control what to control what's going on in individual campuses and to make system-wide decisions. As further evidence of that is, when we allocate money to the community college system, we allocate it as a block grant to the board of regents, and we allocate a similar block grant to the CSU system. And it's really the Board of Regents who distributes that money to the individual colleges, and then takes the additional step of being able to assess back for its services to individual colleges. And so they both send their allowance, and then they send them their dues. So I'm just wondering if you have any comments about the system, whether or not the system itself is in need of reform, in order to sort of bring us back to having more control exercised at the individual collegiate level than even is currently constructed with 12 accredited universities or colleges and 4 accredited universities.
Well, first I should make one point that I think that's very important in terms of addressing a lot of the challenges in higher education. Governance is never the solution. And if that's what we're trying to solve, some of these problems that we have that have been inherent, it's not by changing the governance. What's particularly sad is there's another layer that is being developed between the college what the college presidents were, where they had direct contact on decision making. Under this new system, there's 2 layers they have to go through, and the local administrator is called a CEO, which tells you really what the mindset is, that they're creating a business model and not an academic model that works best for the students. And the students are, you know, one of the beauty of having the independent colleges, I was always amazed how much the local presidents, how they knew their student body. And in the cases with Northwestern, they'd even know some of them by name. And they know all the needs and the businesses and the community leaders. And it's sad that we are going to be losing some of those incredible connections. But I think it's really important that for the legislators, especially those of you who are on appropriations, to realize that the financing piece for you, your responsibility, is making sure you're aligning the finances with what you're trying to achieve in terms of the mission. And sadly, I think this is not going in that direction. I mean, I've seen nothing that explains how they are going to be helping students with this. I mean, again, it's being called students first, and it sounds like more bureaucracy first. Students, oh yeah, later on down the food chain. So the things that are lacking now are that under this new system is that rapid response that can happen from the schools. I do think that you need to hold their feet to the fire on this financing piece, because this is how it got sold. This is why legislators voted for it, because they believed it was a sustainable way to help the colleges and put more money into student programs and more advisors. Estella Lopez's story about customer service, that tells you right then and there, it's a business model. You're not calling up and talking to the registrar or someone connected with the school, an advisor. They're calling it customer service. Well, it's not Amazon, you're trying to reach. And that's sad. But Stephen Adair and Estelle, these people have been fighting on the front lines of this stuff for years. And I so admire that they're still involved and listen to what they have to say.
I thank you for your answer, and we'll listen to what you have to say. You get a lot of years of experience working in this as well, and so I appreciate your testimony, and thanks for taking your time out of your day to come.
I have one more comment I just wrote down. The whole terminology, that throwing out racial equity out of this consolidation, that's a new buzzword. And if you remember, Greg, when we were talking about this, that issue never came up as being a solution. I don't understand how consolidation gets at racial equity. So I think someone is trying to appeal to our sensibilities here. So I just wanted to add that.
It's a good observation. Thank you, Roberto.
Yeah.
Okay, I think if Greg, you're all set, we got Maria Horton next.
Excuse me. Thanks, Senator. And it's okay. Hi, Roberta.
Hi, you look familiar.
I was going to say, you look familiar to me. I have the great privilege of occupying the Roberta Willis seat and representing 64th District. And I just wanted to note that I find a lot in this conversation, basically a question about rural communities in our area and other rural parts of the state, because I find a lot of echoes in this conversation about the challenges that we have in rural areas with respect to all kinds of resources, healthcare among them. And I fear that consolidation programs, that this particular program poses a special risk for rural areas, because there's a natural pull to consolidate resources and programs into denser areas, and then rural areas which desperately need this access lose even more. And as you know, we have limited transportation. And so getting somewhere else, it just seems to snowball. I wonder whether do you see that as a particular risk to rural areas, this program as well?
Someone who's been connected to Northwestern Connecticut Community College, we're always the little guy that who feel threatened that our voices aren't going to be heard. And again, I think by having your local connections with your local president, having that you feel as though you do have some kind of voice at that level, and that president is going to have the ability to make your voice heard, at the larger table of the 12 community colleges. I mean, Quinnebog and some of the other really smaller campuses, worry about that the needs of rural students are different, transportation issues and so forth is not as easy to manage as you can at a larger campus.
Yeah, thanks, Roberta. So I thank you and all the people who have been working on this for so long, as I'm learning a lot from all of you. So nice to see you as always.
Thank you, Representative Horn. Next will be Representative Wood.
Great, thank you, Senator Lopes. And nice to see you, Roberta, and it very much appreciate. I'm sorry we never served on higher ed together. I've been on the committee 2 years and I've so enjoyed it. A question to you on one of the reasons they say those who want or pushing the community college consolidation, they talk about making it easier to transfer between the state university system, the different colleges. Why do you think that takes consolidation and can't just be done very simply?
Wow. That has been a challenge between all of the schools, not just the 12 community colleges and the 4 state universities, is the transfer and articulation. And for a whole host of reasons, even competition amongst the different schools, that has been a very, very challenging task. And I think that, and it makes common sense that there should be transfer and articulation. Mm-hmm. So that was another thing that sold legislators, and it's very appealing to solve that problem, course numbering and having courses aligned across all campuses. You're right. I mean, it should happen. There's no reason why consolidation needed to happen for that to happen, but I think it was the easiest path forward for administrators.
Thank you. Like Representative Turco and I think Representative Metzger earlier, it's Metzger, sorry. I'd like to find, I think some of the ideas behind consolidation makes sense. However, I don't believe we need consolidation of all the system to create those efficiencies. So I look forward to working together and figuring out how we can ease the transition, especially around transfers. It seems it should be very simple. And maybe we could have a information session on why it's so difficult. It just doesn't make sense to me, but I appreciate your answer.
Yeah, we've had several hearings on it, and so there may be a lot of testimony that can be looked at and reviewed and help this caucus as they move forward. But yeah, it's been a long haul on that.
Yeah, all right, thank you. And again, nice to see you, and thank you, Senator Lopes.
It's a pleasure. Any other questions for Representative Lopes? Seeing none, thank you. Have fun out in Western Connecticut. Hope all is well.
Thank you.
I see next on the list, Jamie Zakowski.
Hi, thank you, Representative Lopes, and thank you, distinguished representatives, for having me here. I'm a student here at Caucus, currently in the library on ground, which is why I'm wearing my mask. I'd like to start by sharing my my kind of story and why I'm here at Tunxis. I'm a first graduation student. I enrolled in Tunxis in 2018 at 23 years old. I spent the last 3 years cultivating mentorship and friendships with Tunxis faculty, staff, and students. And this community has truly become a place of my pride. The confidence and inspiration faculty instilled in me allowed me to use what I went through in high school to create a higher education to pursue psychology. I was unable to take the traditional route because I had a series of depressive episodes in my late teenage years that required hospitalizations. Tunxis was an accessible option at a time when I was getting my life back. I share this personal story with you not for your sympathies, but to emphasize the real risks that mental health issues pose to students if there's inadequate support. To ensure support, however, adequate funding is necessary. Funding that is being distributed in an inequitable way to a few administrators rather than the students. I am now in classes with people of all ages, but 75% of Tunxis's nearly 4,000 students are ages 18 through 34. This is among the age demographic in which the second leading cause of death is death by suicide. My peers, your student constituents, are at risk of crisis that can be prevented through support. There are only 2 counselors at Tunxis Community College. Brilliant as they are, the ratio of them to their thousands of students on top of academic advising is asking too much from 2 individuals. My peers deserve more access to support if and statistically when they need it. I raised this concern with President Cheng when he visited the Tunxis campus. I did not get the feeling his priorities are aligned with mine. The student first transition is his priority. So I encourage this legislative body to ask, what is the point of an initiative that claims it is for the students while it simultaneously divests from the students and does not invest in what we need? I do not endorse anything, including the Students First initiative, that takes money away from the places that students are. Students are not in administrative offices. We are on the campuses, and we are the reason these campuses exist. Thank you. Yeah, I would also like to note, because I'm now over 3 minutes, that the Student First's claim of increased retention is just not realistic. Citing Colina and her initial statement, I'd like to emphasize that removing developmental courses will guarantee their dropout. That's not retention, okay? I've encountered several students just this semester that take advantage of these developmental courses. I haven't been in high school for like 6 years. Some of these individuals have not been in high school for, no kidding, like 60 years. I'm taking algebra. Developmental algebra is just gonna be gone. Developmental literature gonna be gone. And
Amy,
so
sorry to interrupt you, but we're at the mark now, the time mark. If you please wrap up your comments. Thank you.
This initiative is discriminatory to those students like me who are non-traditional and need extra support, as we've been out of the system for a while. And I'd just like to end by restating that we're the reason these campuses exist, and we need support.
Thank you, Jamie. You particularly said what the core problem is very succinctly, and I appreciate that. So thank you for sharing your time. I see Representative Cheese move her hand up.
Thank you, Senator Lopes. Thank you so much, Jamie. And I want to thank you for raising the issue of mental health support. And my previous conversations with some of the faculty, I understand that this has been theoretically a huge investment is made, but by outsourcing this to a Texas-based counseling firm. And I would like you to comment on that, because as you know, people have become used to virtual healthcare, virtual therapy, but can you explain why you think it's so important to have people physically there on campus? Because, and I'm going to be very personal here. I know myself the toll the pandemic has taken on everybody and on individuals who are, you know, quote unquote, normally mentally healthy. But for people like you, and you are very honest about your struggles, and the students who have seen their lives disrupted, please explain why it is so important from your point of view and from the students' point of view to have people on campus who are there to help you when you're in distress.
Absolutely. A conversation I actually had before this hearing was with Helen of the Phi Theta Kappa chapter here at Caucus. And she told me that just this past semester, Vivian Craven and Judy, I'm blanking on her last name, but the two mental health counselors here at Caucus have received like tenfold students needing on-ground support. And their job, I mean, like, essentially, they are brilliant. They work hard, and but to put that much responsibility on people that like can't be everything to everyone. They do a lot of outsourcing, right? And telehealth was mentioned as well, but the physical client practitioner relationship really puts the human in mental health practice. And when you remove it, I mean, you don't know if somebody's truly in a crisis, like, and a lot of students may be, we just don't know. So if we had more mental health counselors on campus and students knew that there was a place that they could go to for immediate support, they could. However, if there's only two, okay, we'll get back to you in 2 weeks. You know, some students need help now or tomorrow, but they may not get that. So that's why it's
okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Jamie. I appreciate your frankness and for you coming here to talk to us today. Thank you very much, Senator Lopes.
Thank you. The next person I have on the list is Diva Camburo.
Yes, thank you, honorable representatives, for this listening session. I also want to especially thank Senator Lopes and Holly Cheeseman, State Representative Holly Cheeseman, for agreeing to be co-chairs of this bipartisan caucus. And no one had to twist your arm. And I really appreciate that. And I thank the volunteers here today, the legislative volunteers. And I want to also thank Aaron Supple. He's been great. And Rick, you're very, Senator Lopes, I think you're very fortunate to have him as a legislative aide. Okay, let me introduce myself. My name is Diva Camburo. I'm the program coordinator of environmental engineering technology at Three Rivers Community College. I'm the AFT Legislative Affairs Liaison. I started my educational journey at Thames Valley State Technical College, now Three Rivers Community College. I was a first generation non-traditional student. The community college gave me the confidence and step up I needed to continue my education, receiving my bachelor's degree from UConn, my master's degree from RPI, and my PhD from UConn. We've heard today already from New Mexico Community College, and I thank Tracy and Kathy for agreeing to come and testify today. They have alternatives. You know, it's not necessary to consolidate. They're doing a completely different way of putting the back office functions together as a consortium, as a partnership. And not making the community colleges into corporate America as the Board of Regents and the system office is doing. Right now, the bureaucratic enormity and the consolidation are so understated and not transparent. The hiring of high-paid administration who do not interact with students is a problem. The fact that the Board of Regents Human Resources Vice President has already confirmed that no educational decisions will be made at any of the 12 community colleges once we are consolidated. Those decisions include curriculum development, faculty and staff hiring, promotion, professional development, etc. The system office will make all those educational decisions for those 12 community colleges. It's scary. It will cause more inequities than we already have. That will happen to our, what will happen to our unique programs that we have developed over the years with our students, community, constituents, and our employers. What will happen to the educators who are the experts in their field, who make the curriculum for the betterment of the programs that they run? They will no longer have that curriculum development oversight. The Board of Regents and Systems office will. What will happen to those students who get lost in the bureaucratic nonsense and malarkey? What will happen to those students who need developmental education but can no longer receive it because non-educators decided we no longer need it? The students affected most are the underrepresented, non-traditional, and first-generation students. Those students need a leg up. They need a stepping stone to get that boost up into the university system or to be employed successfully like I did. Why do we need to continue to be bamboozled by all of this? We need to speak up. We need to make a difference because there is a better way. And New Mexico Community College, Tracy and Kathy have said so. And I believe in their alternative methods and alternative ways. I also want to say that my program, Three Rivers Community College, Environmental Engineering Technology, I have a 2+2 articulation agreement that didn't come because we're going to consolidate. It's because they really, UConn, respected the program of that was at Three Rivers Community College, which is an associate's degree. It's a 2+2, and a lot of my students graduate in 1 year with a bachelor's degree when they transfer to UConn. And then that holds true with Southern Connecticut State University. So we don't need to consolidate to have these wonderful articulation agreements. Thank you so much for having me and listening to me today.
Thank you. Any questions for Deba? Seeing none, thank you very much. Our next speaker is going to be Mike Bukaris.
Hi, thanks. I'm Mike Bukaris, and since about 1978, I've been most of my professional life has been working with students in our community colleges. I've been everything from a student tutor to a counselor to a trio director. I'm currently full-time faculty. I've also served as the chief academic officer at Norwalk Community College on an interim basis. So I want to talk to you a little bit more about the students who are impacted and give you an example of one. When we create this kind of a centralized bureaucracy and allow it to make these sweeping, rapid decisions that can compromise instructional and student support services, it's our adult learners who are the ones who lose out. And an example of this is the case of the ACME policy that will prevent future students from having access to the developmental education that was designed for them under PA 1240, designed to meet their learning needs as well as be considerate of their life circumstances. Let me offer you an example of one of my current students. She is in my developmental English class in the evening. She's working 2 jobs to put her son through college. She's a bright, energetic woman who wants to be a nurse, but she knows that she has to improve her skills in order to be successful in that kind of a rigorous program. She was not born in this country, and she developed her English skills through high school ESL classes. But it's been over 20 years since she was in school, and now upon returning, she has to work very, very hard, diligently, to improve her reading and writing skills so that she's ready for the challenges ahead. Each week she takes my feedback on her latest essay and really puts in her own time and energy and effort between her shifts at work and on the weekends to get better. And the good news is she has gotten a lot better. Her skills are improving as a result. And as a result, she will pass my class and be ready for English 101 this January. But she would not have been successful in the proposed accelerated coursework. You see, even though my classes start at like 7 o'clock at night, my student Angela and her classmates often rush in at the last minute from taking care of their families or their work responsibilities. These kinds of students don't have the time to register for extra hours weekly in order to keep up with the pace of accelerated instruction. These people are, the accelerated programs are designed for students who are traditional students who only have the priority of being successful in school. Yet these adult learners are juggling their priorities because they believe that education offers them a future that's different from the one they have now. And when we fail to offer them options that they can manage for a learning pace that they can manage, we really effectively frustrate them. And sure,
sorry to interrupt, just at the 3-minute mark, if you could wrap up your.
Yep. We effectively frustrate them and close the door on education. When decision-making is moved away from the local colleges, where faculty and staff who actually work with these students can voice their concerns in key committees, and we leave it in the hands of a centralized bureaucracy, we make it less likely that these students' needs are going to be heard or even noticed, and more likely that they'll fall through the cracks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I see Representative Masters with his hand up. Please proceed.
First, I was slow to the punchline for Jamie. I wanted to thank her for her testimony. I thought it was very insightful, and Diva as well, you. And Mike, certainly what you're saying. You know, again, I'm wrestling with the issue in terms of what level of consolidation, what level of operational efficiency. But first, I'm not going to send mental health work to Texas from the very point of view that even as a conservative Democrat, I'm not outsourcing my tax dollars to psychologists in Texas unless for some reason the Texas psychologists are the best in the world. I think on-campus support staff, you know, I said I facetious, but on-campus support staff, whether it's educational or bridging the gap or achieving the inclusion of students, where I look at, you know, community college is not just the economic or cheap way to get to your 4-year degree. It's the gap and the breach in helping people achieve their educational aspirations. And Mike, I heard you loud and clear. I agree 100%. People who are juggling priorities. We talk about hand ups and handouts. This is a hand up. This is I'm not sure the model. I need to get, you know, I hear the strong message in this informational session, and it's very helpful. I still are wrestling with the issue about can I build the model that's more centric and yet is responsive? And what I'm hearing so far is at least there are serious questions about the concentration is not being responsive. Or we're stripping away the responsibility to deal with those clients / constituents who are going to the school and need our assistance. So, you know, that's resonating with me. So don't think that you're speaking to us and we're not paying attention. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. And as Estella said earlier, the most efficient way to deliver services that make sense for the students who are in our actual schools is when you have leadership that brings together the people that work with them, work with those students who can provide critical information and advocacy. And you have leadership that can integrate the student support side of the school and the academic instruction side. That's the way it works. And it's been shown to work that way. And if you take the leadership out of the local schools, you lose that ability to make a program that is responsive to students' needs. And our adult
Yeah.
learners are the ones who suffer.
And I kind of hear you. I guess where I'll sit and where I'll pose, and it's a rhetorical. The question is, can I concentrate the power, but leave the liability and the voting control, so that the leadership has to respond to those on the ground, boots on the ground people? Because what I'm hearing is it's a top-down system that you don't even understand the design, or that the design is not responsive, and that concerns me, because I'm not against some concentration of organizational structure, but if you're not attending to if the students are not attended to, we're failing. So I appreciate that a lot.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, Representative? All right. Representative Phipps, if you could mute yourself, thank you. Mike, I think we're all set. I appreciate your testimony.
Thank you.
And next we have Lois Amy.
Good afternoon, Caucus members. My name is Lois Amy. I'm the Director of Educational Technology and an adjunct professor at Norwalk Community College. I'm also the President of the Norwalk Community College Senate and a member of the Faculty Advisory Committee to the Board of Regents. Much of what I'm going to talk about, I've already written about in other documents over the years. When asked what alternative there might be to the Students First debacle, my response is simply to fund us, as we need to be funded to operate in a way that will allow us to best serve our students and our communities. As Heather McGee writes in her book, The Sum of Us, quote, public commitment to college for all was a crucial part of the white social contract for much of the 20th century. In 1976, state governments provided 6 out of every $10 of the cost of students attending public colleges. That's no longer the case, unquote. The interest in continuing to fund public higher education has decreased over time, so that now the prevailing question is how can we do education on the cheap? This is short-sighted in the extreme. The future of this country is at risk. Were the January 6th Capitol riots a failure to educate? This question was asked by an Inside Higher Education article on January 8th of this year. Connecticut's equity issues are pervasive. Connecticut is one of the richest states in the country and also has the second highest income inequality in the country. And as noted in a Connecticut Mirror article published January 4 of this year, our 12 schools, our K through 12 schools, quote, are among the most segregated in the country, unquote. Most of the students who enroll in community colleges in Connecticut come from the cities and towns that do not have resources to properly fund their schools. Thus, students who come to us as open enrollment institutions are by and large ill-prepared to take college-level courses through no fault of their own. How will the consolidation of the community colleges into one monolithic college improve equity in learning in Connecticut? We know it will not. And the only way it will improve retention and graduation is by reducing the rigor of the courses and programs offered, as is already apparent in what we have seen. Shared governance has been ignored. Resolutions passed, votes taken, comments made go unnoticed by the BOR and system office. Questions are never asked by the Board of Regents. It appears we are purposely being underfunded so that anything that is proposed will look better than what is the current reality. Our students are the pawns in this game. This will forever affect their future and the future of Connecticut and Connecticut public higher education. This cannot be allowed to drag out further. We cannot continue to operate on pennies thrown in our general direction while the system office spends money that should be supporting our students. In the 1960s, during the civil rights era, activists tried to integrate whites-only swimming pools in the South and elsewhere. In response to that request, the pools were emptied or filled with dirt or concrete or made private. In effect, it stopped everyone from using the pools. We are metaphorically doing the same thing. By reducing the rigor of an education that should be the stepping stone for all our students to become educated, productive citizens of our state and of our country, we are giving every student exactly the same second-rate education. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Amy. Representative Masters, I see your hand up again. You have a question? Okay.
Sorry, I didn't take it down.
That's okay, happens. Any questions for Ms. Amy? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony. Appreciated. I will go on to Francis Cohen next.
Sorry about that. I had to unmute myself. Thank you, Senator Lopes, distinguished senators and representatives. My name is Francis Cohen. I'm a professor of history at Tunxus Community College. Currently, Tunxus is undergoing an evaluation by its accrediting agency, NESHE, that has documented over 20 areas of concern, most attributable to the Students First plan. Please see my written testimony for further details. The previous NESHE evaluation of Tunxus in 2011 listed only 5 areas of concern, including, ironically, the disruptive potential of the creation of the Board of Regents and the lack of adequate resources for the college. The current evaluation, conducted by higher education professionals unaffiliated with our system, demonstrates that 5 years of Students First has left Tunxus in a financially precarious position. Any savings are attributable to attrition, which has resulted in steadily increasing workloads for faculty and staff. This trend, coupled with the centralization of services, has resulted in inferior, less responsive services for all. All key decisions are made by managers in Hartford or New Britain, not the CEO of Tunxus. System goals have sidelined the college mission and hampered the work of the faculty, who have lost most of their agency and have no advocates on campus except themselves. Local initiatives are rare because the consolidation is paramount and faculty are exhausted and demoralized. Relations between management and faculty are strained. The former must demonstrate loyalty to their supervisors to keep their jobs. The latter resist managerial attempts to control communication, discourage open debate and discussion, and silence dissenting voices. For 5 years, Tunxus students and community members have been harmed by the diversion of money, personnel, time, creativity, and energy away from them and towards the construction of an institution that does not yet exist and has not yet been accredited by NESHE. This harm is ongoing. The challenges Tunxus is experiencing will likely persist and maybe even worsen because of the fundamentally flawed nature of Students First. While NESHE has documented a myriad of concerns about the consolidation, it is unlikely the agency will do more than to hope that the proposed one college eventually meets certain bare minimal standards. I urge you to examine the evidence I presented and to do everything in your power to halt the consolidation. The 12 independently accredited, formerly autonomous community colleges represent unique centers of learning and service and laboratories of innovation and problem solving, each geared to the citizens of a particular region of the state. If these institutions are destroyed, and that process is well underway, my students and those to come, as well as the taxpayers of Connecticut, will be the biggest losers. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. I see Representative Pavlak-Meadow, your hand raised. Please proceed.
Yes, thank you very much. Mr. Cohen, thank you for your testimony. I know there were, based on, I believe, meetings, but there were figures in the past that I think were part of public view. And I was wondering if there's any updates to those figures, and if you could specify, I know in the past you had pointed out to me specific line items in those reports from the meetings that were of particular concern, figures from, the consolidation that were a lot higher or that maybe were not truthful as first told to us, I'll say. And if you could kind of go into that a little bit specifically, and if there have been meetings again where we can look at some of these figures and where the highest numbers and costs are.
Yeah, it's very difficult to get at the actual cost of consolidation. Dr. Adair certainly has done a lot of research into the documents, and he estimates probably it'd be $100 million, more or less, by the time this is done, if it is done by 2023, and it's not clear it will be, by the way. Because of shared services now, a large number of staff on the campuses are reporting to people in Hartford or New Britain, or maybe both, I don't even know. So it's really, really difficult to get at the cost. We do know in FY21, the total cost of the community college system office was about 11% of the entire budget of the community colleges. It was just short of 11%. And I'm sure that's higher now. But beyond that, yeah, there has been an enormous cost. And the other point I'm trying to stress, obviously, there's been an enormous opportunity cost, because all of the energy, all of the focus has been to build this monstrosity. It has not been devoted to students. It has not been devoted to the 12 colleges. Everything's been diverted in this direction. And it's harming our colleges, it's harming our communities, it's harming our students, and it's costing a fortune.
And do they, I know there were meetings and those updated amounts of line items. Where can we find those? Or is that something that can be provided to the members of the committee?
I'm sure my colleagues and I could forward you some of that. The best place to look would be the finance committee meetings of the Board of Regents, which are held fairly regularly. Ben Barnes typically attends those and provides reports, documentation. But then it's a matter of wading through those reports and trying to make sense of them. It's very, very difficult, honestly, because now the colleges are so entangled with the system office. It's very difficult to separate out where money is being allocated, where it's being sent, where it's being spent.
Thank you. And one last question. Are there any positions where people are being paid but are not actually working yet?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
Not to my knowledge. I think the concern we have is we have had people working for an institution, and they still are. The state is paying millions of dollars for the Connecticut State Community College. That does not exist. It is an administrative apparatus. That is all it is. It will not exist unless and until it is accredited by NESHE. And as a word of warning, I think it is likely that will happen unless either the governor or the General Assembly take action to halt this, or to at least pause it. But it is an institution that does not exist. It serves no students, it offers no classes. It simply costs a lot of money. And again, is diverting from the mission of the 12 community colleges.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Any other questions for Mr. Cohen? Seeing none, thank you very much. And make sure you email your testimony to my aide, Aaron Suffel.
Thank you.
Next person signed up to speak, Sandra Couture.
Yes, hi. Thank you, Representative Lopes and fellow legislators for convening this very important meeting. My name is Sandra Couture. I am an educational technology specialist in the distance learning department at Middlesex Community College in Middletown, Connecticut. I'm also a first-generation student and a lifelong Connecticut resident that has truly personally and financially benefited. I am a Tunxis graduate. I'm also a UConn graduate, so I was able to go to Tunxis, graduate from there, and transfer directly to UConn. I'm also currently a higher education, counseling and higher education development student, grad student at CCSU. And what's happening in our system right now is truly concerning, not just from a staff member point of view, but also as a student who studies higher education currently, and also as a person who is a current student at CCSU. This consolidation is not just a change of structure. This is a change of a way of life. We're talking about all students moving forward. I am not just a student and a staff member at Middlesex. I'm also an aunt. I lived like 2 minutes away, literally, from Tunxus. And my niece lives in the same town I grew up in. And if it was not for Lisa Lavoie, who was the wonderful, she's now retired, but this wonderful lady who helped me in high school when I was a high school student, that was my first contact with a community college. And I have had nothing but excellent experiences, either as a student, a staff member, or as you know, an instructor. One of the things we really have to understand that this is not the hashtag students first. This is hashtag 6 figures first. Let's be quite honest. The BOR is trying to feed the public and the Connecticut legislators a false narrative that there is only black or white logical fallacy going on here. There's only 2 options: consolidation or bankruptcy. There is no transparency and no accountability of how the BOR is spending their money or how their organization or how they're organizing it. And this is taxpayer money that's being used to do this. BOR is making business type decisions with people who have MBAs and no one who truly has any higher education background. This is a corporatization of higher ed. We have to really, really watch out, because this is affecting our most, vulnerable students here that need that college in your backyard. Just to kind of quote back to a textbook that we use in our Designing for Learning by it's Creating Campus Environments for Student Success by Strange and Banning, which is, I pulled it out here. It's one of the classes we have to take at CCSU. What we currently now have in place is a collegial system, and what the BOR is proposing is a bureaucratic system. I'll just outline very quickly what the differences they're looking for. Right now, we have a consensus-based decision-making model. They want a top-down decision-making model. Currently, we operate based on negotiated agreements. They want to operate by directives. Change occurs currently at our campuses through dialogue and conversation. They want it to occur by mandates. A bureaucratic system that the BOR is trying to push is more centralization, more formalization, and more stratification. There's less creativity, less collaboration, and less innovation in the BOR's proposed consolidation. Taxpayer money is not only in the wrong hands, it's being used, massively mishandled, with no transparency and accountability. As a Connecticut taxpayer, I'm concerned. As a student, I'm concerned. And as a—
Excuse me, Ms. Clocher,
Okay.
sorry,
Yep.
we're
No
at time now. If you could just wrap up your comments.
Sure.
Thank you so
I
much.
appreciate it. Thank you. Our students are not moving out of state. They stay here. And if, there's no brain drain going on. And so if we want to really make contributions to our students, whether they're adult or children who will soon become college students, we need to really revisit this consolidation question.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Ms. Butcher? Seeing none, thank you very much for hanging on and testify. And next is Kimberly Small.
Good afternoon. I appreciate the chance to speak to this caucus. I'm coming to this situation from a different perspective. I'm actually the Office and Data Manager for the 4Cs, Congress of Connecticut Community Colleges, that represents the over 3,500 faculty and staff, full and part-time, across the 12 campuses. And what I have found as this quote unquote shared services model has been implemented, there has been absolutely no attempt to understand the functions that go along with sharing services. I have 947 employees with no work email address. And I think you can understand how that would inhibit union communications with our members. We've also had several instances of the BOR failing to fulfill their side of the union cooperative effort of sharing membership information. One of the most egregious right now is, since the payroll of September 10th through the payroll of November 19th, 6 full payroll periods, I had 139 job record corrections that were required for people who should be switched to dues paying codes. That has not happened. I now have a new payroll for 12/3, and still have no indication of when the 12, or rather the 6 weeks that they already have will be completed. This has been very frustrating. It's upsetting to the members who want to know why their dues isn't being taken out. And one of the big issues with this is it could easily be corrected by transferring dues codes to the member, not the job codes, which can change regularly. We also are having a very difficult time getting communications from BOR in a method that lets us reach out to our union members so that we can help them understand and work through issues as they arise. We had an episode of the bargaining unit totals specified by the BOR was 3,900 plus people. Our records indicated we only had 3,533 people. So we'd like to know where that other 400 people are and why we don't know anything about them. I also have a member who submitted her membership form in August 2021. She has still not appeared in either the Office of the Comptroller's payroll records or in any information I've gotten from the BOR. This is very frustrating and it's completely unnecessary. Prior to this transfer of power, I guess, there were very smooth systems in place where we could get things resolved quickly and easily. Now there's no one taking accountability for any of these issues. We've had 200 people.
Kimberly, we're at the 3-minute mark now. If you could wrap up your comments. Thank you.
Okay, one of the other issues is they begun transferring people to the Board of Trustees without indicating where that person's actual work site is. And upon learning that they've been assigned there, many people are very upset and concerned about their jobs because they've been moved without any knowledge or warning that that was going to happen. We need the BOR to cooperate with us so that we can ensure that everyone is represented fairly and correctly. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Kimberly? All right, thank you for that perspective. And next speaker I have is Kate Babbitt. Anyone see Kate? All right, so I have down as our final speaker today is Lauren Doninger.
Hi, I'm Lauren Doninger, professor at Gateway and chair of the Faculty Council at Gateway. And thank you for the opportunity to address you. One of the reasons for the cataclysmic failures that have mounted over the past 4 years is that the board values speed over quality. They fail to take an inventory or to meaningfully assess. The board and system office work in an echo chamber. This board has burned bridges rather than build them. I'm going to give you one concrete example of the epic failure of this board and system. It is a harbinger of what is to come if the reckless board goes unchecked. TAP, or the transfer ticket, has been touted to you as a success, probably the only success you've heard about. TAP, like the proposed consolidation, is bloated, stodgy, complicated, and riddled with hidden costs. This data-driven institution should know how much TAP costs. Try to find out. At a minimum, TAP costs the salaries of 17 faculty meeting every month for nearly 10 years. In the summer of 2012, Dr. Deborah Weiss from Southern and I co-chaired the original TAP committee. There was enormous pressure to complete the proposal over the summer. We knew that what was created would require revision. We did not know that it would become so bogged down in bureaucracy and that the rush had created so many structural flaws that TAP would be a dinosaur from the start. We did not know that nearly 10 years later, very little would have changed because it's too big and because consolidation has stopped real progress at all of the colleges. The one peripheral success of TAP is that strong relationships were built across institutions, which allowed Gateway and Southern to create seamless, actual transfer that serves students. It's not surprising, all progress comes from good relationships, the exact opposite of what this board and system cultivated. Since 2015, Students who graduate with a degree in liberal arts and sciences have the gen ed at Southern waived. No vice presidents or manager salaries required. The barriers have toppled. Please see my written testimony for details. But the board is unwilling or unable to critically reevaluate anything that they put into motion. Please compare the student-focused lean work between Gateway and Southern with the Medusa that is TAP. 10 years ago, this massive bureaucracy built TAP. The problems with it have been well known for 8 years. The costs are unknown, yet it's paraded out to you as a big success. TAP is an expensive, unwieldy bureaucratic mess wrapped in puffed up claims of success and efficiency, just like consolidation. One of the big differences is that as independent colleges, we were able to work around TAP to actually serve students. That will not be the case with consolidation. Our students will be stuck with the mess. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Doninger. I want to do a follow-up question quickly. Separate from your testimony, we had Jamie speak earlier in the list about mental health services available at the schools, and as a former mental health social worker, it's concerning to me. Do you have any insight into that?
Yeah, I'm a licensed professional counselor, licensed alcohol and drug counselor, and I teach in the drug and alcohol recovery counselor program at Gateway on the biology of addiction. And I am so gravely concerned about this, like, phona therapist. There is so much. I think Representative Cheeseman was asking about the difference between in-person counseling versus this remote. And, you know, for somebody who is what we might call the worried well, somebody who's doing some growth-oriented therapy, the remote can be a fine solution. But for vulnerable students, students who are in crisis, there is so much that's missed. When I'm sitting with a client, I am looking for things like body movement, how tense they are. I can't see that on a camera. I'm looking at their pupils to assess for risk for substance use. That can't be done. And for many of our population for whom accessing therapy to begin with, there are a lot of cultural barriers to it. To add the impersonal element of having to call somebody in Texas, I mean, it just doesn't even intuitively make sense. My gravest concern with this is students who are in crisis. And this is absolutely another example of this removed corporate model that doesn't speak to the students who are in our midst right now and who need and deserve our services right now.
Appreciate that. Any questions for Ms. Doninger? All right, seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony. I don't have anyone else on my list to come and speak, so I'd like to wrap up with a few comments. And first of all, thank all the people who came to speak today. This is just the very first step in a long process of these ad hoc issue caucuses are not as common, but I thought it was appropriate during the off-session time to start getting our members educated more and more about what's going on with this consolidation process in the Board of Regents. I'm a realist. I do understand that the Board of Regents consolidation process is pretty far along, and there's quite a lot of momentum in that process. But at the same time, there's also a lot of problems, and we would be remiss in our duty if we did not investigate them and suggest solutions. So one of the hopes of this ad hoc caucus is that, this is to the legislators still on the list, is that this should start you thinking about legislation for next session on how we can improve this process. As someone who's been around long enough to see multiple iterations of consolidation of the schools and seeing one failure after another, I'm very concerned that we're heading down a path of consolidation that'll just be another failure and have to be addressed again a couple of years down the road, with the biggest losers being the students, the faculty, and the residents of the state. This particular iteration seems to also cost a lot of money, so the taxpayers are concerned as well. I would like to do another caucus. Spoken to Representative Cheeseman about this, and invite the new president of the Board of Regents to come maybe and give testimony. Obviously would not be compelled but if you wish to come in and speak, that'd be wonderful. And possibly someone from the administration as well. And I know time is tight before session. I don't know if we'll get it done in December, but maybe early January. And then after that, my hopes is as we learn more and more about this process as legislators, we can start to put together legislation next session that would be bipartisan and strongly backed. I would love, we had a hard time last session getting bills called that address this situation. There's a lot of reasons for that. But I believe if we can work and have a really strong bipartisan coalition where we can get 50 to 70 introducers of a bill, it should have a little bit more weight behind it, be taken more seriously. That would be my ultimate goal in this process. And then, of course, we'd be handing it off to our good friends, the chair of the Higher Ed Committee, for them to work on next session. But I do see Representative Wood with her hand up. So before I go to Representative Cheeseman, Terry, please go ahead.
Sorry, I've got a phone ringing and I don't know how to get it to, septic calls. Trying to juggle the technology. Thank you. I think that sounds like a great plan. I can provide the legislation we've presented the last couple of years through higher ed on this issue. And it's all passed out of committee, all unanimous. And we have had a lot of co-signers along the way. So I appreciate your support for this. I got to grab that because but I'm loving this caucus and so thrilled so many involved. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Representative Wood. I have to go to mute every time the doorbell rings or something because my dog has it's his duty to announce it to the world. But Representative Cheeseman, go ahead.
Thank you, Senator Lopes. And I want to thank everybody who's come here to testify today. I particularly want to thank Diva and all the work she's done to promote this. And I want to thank the legislators because I think, as Senator Lopes said, we need critical mass on this. This is an issue that's been percolating for a long time. We get there, you can use any analogy you want. The train's left the station, the horse is out of the barn. But I do think at the very least, we need to demand some accountability. Does this demonstrate the goals it was purported to meet? And if not, why not? And if not, how can we achieve those goals of lower costs, of better student services, of getting faculty input? Because after all, you were at the front lines on this. If you don't believe in the system, there's no way it's going to work regardless. So I would welcome the chance to talk to President Chang, anyone else from the system who wanted to talk to us. And if they think this is such a good idea and can demonstrate they're achieving those goals, terrific. But at the very least, we would like to hear what is actually going on with some more transparency and some more accountability. So I want to thank the Senator again for all your work on this. And I look forward to continuing this conversation and moving some legislation forward.
All right, thank you, everyone. I think we got out. Still a little bit of the day left. So everyone, thank you very much again and have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you much.